March. Woo! March was the best month for me, reading wise. However, health wise, it was the worst month ever. I was so sick the entire month. I was down with allergies, which I didn't even know I had. So it was painful. However, all that bed rest, all that time that I was suffering through, I read some amazing books, and I'm going to talk all about them. Book lovers, book buyers, book enthusiasts, so welcome to Trisha by the Book. I am Trisha, and I'm here to share my March wrap up. All the books that I read in March. Okay, I read a total of 9 books in March, and I know it's a huge downfall from 15 books that I read in January and February, but I was sick. I was really down with some severe pollen allergy. Even though I read 9 books, I was really satisfied with what I read this month. I had some really amazing reads. I read some new releases as well, some really big books as well. And I don't really like to beat myself down thinking that, hey, you have to read 15 books because I read XYZ amount of books. I don't care. I'm a mood reader, and if I feel like reading, I will read it. There are times when I absolutely don't feel like reading. I do give myself 1 or 2 days to just relax and not really be bound by the schedule that, oh, you have to finish these many books in a month so that I can, share those with you. No, I'll share. Even if I'm reading 1 book a month, I will still share those with. So without further ado, let's begin. I gotta still drink my protein so that I'm. March was really big on thriller and fantasy. I read 5 thriller books in the month of March, and then I think I read 3 fantasy books, and then 1 was like a dystopian sci-fi fiction. And also, I read a lot of my physical books this month. I think previously I had so many ebooks that I wanted to read. I just ended up neglecting my physical books, and now I am so pumped up for no reason. Like, I bought all these new releases and I wanted to read them, but I never got a chance. So now I think I'm gonna focus a lot on reading my physical books as well. Book number 1 is Dear Debbie by Freida McFadden. If you watched any of my videos in the month of March, you know that I did a dedicated video on Freida McFadden, her worst and best book in her backlist. And this one is a new one. This is a new release. This released this January. And yeah, this released in January 2026. And as I shared in those videos, I am a huge part of the problem. I buy Freida McFadden books as soon as they come out because sometimes I'm in a reading slump, and I do like to read Freida McFadden's books just to get me out of a slump. Good book, bad book, however it is. Apart from like 1 book, Brain Damage, every other book, I think, even though I don't like it, I would still give it a 1 time. And I would say that with everyone because they do get me out of a reading slump, and they are popcorn thrillers. They're quick reads. Like, you can read these in a flight. Like, every time I'm traveling or I'm in a flight, I always take 1 Freida McFadden book because I know that I'm just gonna read the entire book in like a 3-hour flight. I really like the cover of the book. It gave me a lot of trad vibes, feels, and so did the summary, which I thought this would be a little different than Freida McFadden's other books, and it surely was. Dear Debbie follows Debbie Millen. She is a columnist in a local newspaper, and she gives advice to women about their domestic relationships, any troubles that they have with their husbands, like day-to-day activities. And what I get from Debbie is that she's like a suburban trad wife. She's very docile, and she's non-confrontational. Like, she doesn't like confronting people. She doesn't like to be in other people's face. Like, she seems like a follower. She's pretty quiet, chill, introverted, all by herself. She doesn't like to point fingers. She doesn't like to pick fights. Okay. And she was having some suspicions around her husband, and then her neighbors really were the real housewives or wherever the hell she lived. But she's not dumb. She isn't stupid. She's actually pretty smart. And she got into MIT when she was she was younger, and she was pretty genius. She was pretty genius when it comes to coding, computers. So she was a computer science student at MIT. And unfortunately, she had to drop out of her college due to something that happened. And when she met her husband, they dated for a few years, I guess, a few months, and then they got married, and she just decided to never go back to that, college life, getting a really high paying job. She didn't really, it didn't attract to her that much. But she, yes, while she was a housewife, she also did a lot of things on her side, one being a columnist, but she also made these amazing apps which were only pertain, like she only made those for her family. But she was a genius. Like, she knew things about computers, coding. She was good at it. Now, this is unlike a lot of Freida McFadden's other books. This is, I would call this a medium paced book. Usually her books are really fast paced, but this one is a medium paced book. But unlike her other books, a lot of character work was done in this one. I think I did understand Debbie as a person. I understood her family with her two daughters, her husband. Everyone had a role to play. And of course, like, she did like teenage kids really well. Now, is this like the most shocking book that happened? No. It does have a few trigger warnings again, but I would say it's pretty light on just the overall storyline. Yes, there was a reveal. Yes, there was a plot twist. It wasn't a twist. I mean, it was like, yeah, like I said in other videos as well, she does really good reveals, and there are really handful of books where the plot twist happens. So yeah, this is one of those, and I wouldn't say this does it revolve around, this revolves around dark themes, but I wouldn't say it was like a murder has happened and who's done it, something like that. No, there are times when she does that, and she does those beautifully. Then there are times when she does these unsettling things that happen. I think this is one of those. I like the vigilante side of Debbie. Once she unravels, she becomes this societal vigilante. She's the Batman that every suburban trad wife deserves. She included a lot of suburban drama, tension, dark humor. So I think that was done really well in this book. I gave this 3 stars because it was a solid, quick thriller. However, as compared to the other ones, it was on the average side. There's nothing bad about it, but there's nothing that's just jumping out. There's nothing really good that sets this apart from other thriller books or other Freida McFadden books even. So yeah, I think 3 stars was a pretty good rating for this book, and I did enjoy reading it. Again, I think I finished it in 2 days, like every other Freida McFadden books. The next book that I read was The Marriage Act by John Mars. The Marriage Act is part of the Dark Future series by John Mars, the series that I've been yapping about for the past 2 months. I read The Passenger last month, and then, in February. And then in January, I read The One by John Mars. So they're all part of the series. Now, it's not a series. I mean, the storylines, they don't correlate at all. There are certain Easter eggs here and there. So if you read any book, you'll be like, oh yeah, that was mentioned in the other books. But other than that, there's no relation dependency. So you can read that at any order. I happen to read it in random orders. Like, I read the last book first, and then I read the first one. So I read almost all the books now, and I'm short of one book. So the Minders, I'm going to read them maybe next month or so. So then once that is done, I will try to read John Mars's thrillers. But anyway, this is about the Marriage Act. Okay? So the Marriage Act is set in this near future Britain, just like all the Dark Future series. And let's see this time, what has the government been up to? What new nosy plan they've been plotting? And that the new nosy plan that the government is plotting this time is encouraging people to get married. So the couple who sign up within this Marriage Act, they get a lot of benefits, they get a lot of perks. However, this is a John Mars series, so it's not as simple. They get to have this AI system, this marriage Alexa person set up in their house who listens to every single conversation between those couples. So these AI systems, they are monitoring these couples 24/7. And if there's anything that's happening, like if there's any tiff, there's any argument that happens, she will listen to it. I'm calling it a she, whatever. They listen to it, and then they analyze things like, okay, because they're fighting about buying tomatoes, for example, like one doesn't like tomatoes, the other one does, and they're having this fight about, I don't want to put tomatoes in my salad. What will that lead to? Like, do we need to reconcile? Do we need to send some professional help so that they stay married? Or do we I don't know, like it's bizarre. So she's listening 24/7, and it does happen wherever there are different levels to it. So if on level 1 you're having just a very small argument or so, they let it go, they resolve it. Maybe AI gives an advice or so, I don't know. But if it goes to like level 3, I guess, if it goes to that level where people are genuinely the next step would be like people are genuinely thinking of maybe separating or divorcing each other, then there is social worker kind of a person who is from that same company who's installed, I mean, maybe from the government or from this company who's installed the AI system. I forgot what that name was, what the name of the AI person was, and it's not relevant as well. So they would send this social worker kind of a person who would come to reconcile these couples, would be part therapist, part friend, and they would stay at their house and would observe things about the couples, and then ultimately he would give their thumbs up or thumbs down on what should be the next steps for their marriage. In these days, divorcing or separating, it's not an easy thing. Once you signed up for the marriage act, you have to show up. Like, you can't just get married, take the perks, take the benefits, and then just bounce. No. Now, in typical John Mars fashion, there are multiple POVs, there are many characters. Some are, they haven't signed the marriage act yet, some are about to, and some are like newly married, and there are some who have signed the marriage act long ago, and they are like older couples. So how that affects each and every one of the couples, again, John Mars does for each of the characters, each of these POVs, he does a nice thriller, nice plot twist. So far, all the books that I've read in the series, these things feel like they're very realistic. They can happen in the couple of years. Yeah, in the next couple of years, it's totally gonna happen or has already happened, and it won't even be a shocker for us. But the story that gives us shock are the plot twists with each and every one. And then, of course, there's another POV where there are people who are trying to banish this act as well. Now, these married people are going through their own trials and tribulations. I feel sorry for them. Some of them have been through a lot. But the unmarried people, the lowest rung of the societal hierarchy, they don't get anything. And of course, the book is such an exaggerated version of what actually is happening in the society. After reading all of the Dark Future books, now I'm able to distinguish between my 5 stars, my 4 stars, and the 3 stars. So this one is a 3-starter for me. I feel like the concept, again, it was pretty new, it was pretty relatable. It's something that will happen in the near future. However, there are certain things that I found as really boring to read about, and I think, again, the plots and the twist, since I already read other books, I already knew that each of the POVs are going to have this dark twist, dark past, or dark reveal altogether. And so I did enjoy reading it, but I wasn't like at the edge of my seat trying to know what happens next. The next book that I read in March is My Husband's Wife by Alice Feeney. Oh, this was a good read. This was a good read. This is a new release as well. This came out January 2026, but I finished it in 2 days. And I could have finished it in 1 day, but I was again sick. But as you can see, I wore this book down. I've worn it out. I don't know why, but I absolutely love this book. Yes. My Husband's Wife follows Eden Fox. She's an artist and she lives in Hopes Fall with her husband. And just like every other day, she goes out for an evening run. But while she comes back, she tries to put the lock in at the door and it doesn't work. So someone has changed the locks of her house. So she knocks at the door, she rings the doorbell, and there's a lady who opens the door and she doesn't recognize her. There are no guests that's coming over on that day, and she doesn't know who that other person is who's opening the door. Now, this woman who opened the door, she claims to be Eden Fox, and she says that I'm the real Eden Fox. Like, who the hell are you? And the real Eden Fox, I mean, the one who jogged, she claims to be the real Eden Fox as well. Now, the husband comes in and he says that the woman who opened the door, she's been living here for the longest time and she's my wife. She's the real Eden Fox. And so this whole confusion happens. The police are called and everyone's trying to figure out who the real Eden Fox is. At the same time, there is another character called Birdie. She also comes back to Hope's Falls because she inherited this house that her grandmother gave her, and it's really under really mysterious circumstances. And she wants to find more about the house. She wants to find more about her grandmother. So she's come back to the Hope's Falls, and somehow the stories tie together. As the secrets from the past begins to surface, both Eden and Birdie's lives, they get tangled into this strange, unsettling mystery where nothing is what it seems. Now, this is a psychological thriller with a blend of identity, confusion, there's mystery, and there is a slightly futuristic concept added into it as well, which I loved. Of course, it starts off as a really gripping, like within the first chapter itself, the whole Eden Fox being misidentified as someone else happens, and so you're gripped, you're hooked. And then I really like the fact that it's all throughout the book, there's just mysteries after mystery after mystery. Now, some mysteries are going to be solved, but there are some mysteries, some plots that will take no direction. But I like the fact that they're still in there, because not each and every mystery needs to be uncovered, and this one did it perfectly. On the grandmother storyline, I think it added a lot of gothic vibes to it. However, there were a lot of mysteries still to uncover. There was this missing identity, then there was a murder that happened, then there was this scientific technology that I'm not going to spoil it, but there was something that it did, and we are taken through the entire journey of uncovering each of those. So I think there were enough mysteries to be uncovered. There are some that were not, and I was totally fine with it. Those things are the ones that kept me hooked on this book, and I just couldn't let go. Even when I was like, okay, I'm done for the day, I'm not going to read anymore, I was still thinking about this, like, what would that mean? How did this happen? So I think that's what you want from your readers. You want them to be hooked. And Alice Feeney, I think she's found the nerve. She's found the reader's nerve, and she knows where and how to press it. And this book is just, every single praise is apt for this book. It was really a great read. The next book that I read was Woman Down by Coleen Hoover. She really did a fan fiction about herself. This was a Wattpad version of what actually is happening with Coleen Hoover. Now, I don't think anyone deserves that much of hate and cancellation, but I do like the fact that Coleen Hoover was brave enough to turn that storyline around. And even though, like, you could see when you're reading the book, you could see there are a lot of inspirations taken from what actually happened with Coleen Hoover, with this whole backlash of It Ends With Us movie and the book. So yeah, I mean, she took a lot of inspiration. I felt like after that whole backlash happened, she actually did go somewhere remote in a cabin to write a book, and this is the book that she wrote. Now, this book follows Petra Rose. She is a really famous author, but she has been receiving some really nasty backlash from her recent book that was adapted into a movie and just came out. Hint, hint. Her own life. Now, this movie that came out, there were certain things that the audience didn't like, and it just received this huge backlash. And somehow Petra Rose was in the middle of it. There was some decisions that she made. So the audience, like the readers, everyone, the fans, were really pissed off at Petra Rose more than anyone else, because of her mistake, this huge mishap happened. So they didn't forgive her. They were really nasty about it. She was cancelled. Now, hoping to find some inspiration for a new book, she takes this Airbnb cabin on the lakeside, and she wants to finish her book because she wants to get back on track. It's been a while since she published a book, so she really wants this peace and quiet, and it's the writing process that she does. But when a detective shows up at her door, she finds her muse in him. She finds the inspiration to the story, and Petra's fiction and reality starts to blur in really unsettling ways. Again, this one also has some mixed media. It has like podcast and going live, Insta live, things like that. So it was interesting to see that it really shed a huge light on how our society and how the internet culture works, public criticisms and cancel culture, all of those, Petra. Petra is the victim of all of those. She just channeled it in a book. That I will give it to her. Brave. There are only very few things that I liked about this book. I felt like the premise was really interesting. It was very meta, people getting cancelled. I found that interesting because a lot of times it felt very self-referential. I was side-eyeing it a little bit. Like every time there was something that I could think that this is what Coleen Hoover had been through. It was predictable. There were overly detailed internal monologues, which I didn't really enjoy that much. And then the premise was fine. I mean, I found it interesting at first, like having a muse and then the lines being blurred. It really went dark very quick with the detective and Petra Rose. However, I think the only reason why I didn't like it because after Verity, and I loved Verity, I think that's the best Coleen Hoover book ever. And after Verity, this is the second psychological thriller that she came up, because all the other ones are like romance. I would say that they're in romance category. So I was very excited for her to have a thriller one, being away from the limelight for a while. Now Coleen Hoover came back with a psychological thriller. I had to read those because I had such high expectations after Verity, and it let me down really bad. There were dark themes in there as well, but it didn't lead to anywhere. I think after 50%, I could tell what it was. I knew what the ending was, and I was not happy. Since I knew that this was a plot twist, I was like, even if I didn't know the plot twist, I wouldn't have been happy with this. And this is like 100 pages too long to give that plot twist, like end it already. That's what I was thinking like halfway through. Okay, now we're getting into the fantasy dystopian category. Number 5, I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. This book follows 40 women who have been mysteriously imprisoned in this underground bunker prison, and they are guarded 24/7, and they've been cut off from the outside world. And they have no memory of who they were before and how did they come in here. Among these 40 women, there's a young girl who has literally grown up in this cage. She has no memory of what happened outside, what is life outside. She has none of it. And so she doesn't understand these day-to-day things that maybe the other women would do. So her way of thinking is very different from the other women. Like, even though the other women don't understand much about where they came from and where they came, like why they came here, they still have some idea. Like they still know a few things, like cooking, or like certain things about how to live a life. You have those in your memory, whereas she doesn't. Everything that she learns in this little prison of 40 women and the guards. So I just wanted to confirm, because I couldn't remember the young girl's name. She had no name. Yeah. So this young girl, she's very inquisitive, and even though she was born and brought up here in this cage, she was still curious about there's something not natural about this, and there's this feeling to be free. I think is always ingrained in a person, and then she is that person. Like she knows that there's something out there that she needs to discover, and then one day something really unexpected happens, and this young girl, along with other 39 women, they embark upon this really mysterious journey towards knowing each other and themselves. I think I should stop there because the more I say, it will spoil the premise of the book. However, I will say this is a short read. It was an easy read. I think that this took inspiration from Cormac McCarthy's The Road. I read that book last year, and I think it had a very similar premise and very similar writing style as well. I think this is translated from French book. If I'm wrong, I apologize, but I believe that's what happened. And the writing style, the unknown, I think that is very much inspired by Cormac McCarthy, and I didn't dislike it. I think it was done beautifully. Now, when I compared this with The Road by Cormac McCarthy, it also gave me the same feeling as when I was reading that book. Great concept, I would say, but there were times when I was struggling a little bit in between. In The Road by Cormac McCarthy and in this book as well, both the story just starts in the midst of everything. You don't get a backstory, you don't get to know what happens or what happened later, where we are. Those are not important, which I like, but I also, it gives me a little unsettling feeling. I want to know everything, and I think that's the restraint purposefully done. I knew like I wouldn't get the answers. It would just be like just journey where you may not read the destination. I'm trying to explain it without giving the spoilers, but yeah, it made me feel like I'm taking a long journey, which I did in that book as well. That one was purposeful. This one I wanted some answers which I didn't get, and I also didn't think that there was anything about, like, particularly about men. I think the title itself, it's very catchy. It makes you hooked. It hooked me, but it could have been I who have never known anything, but I don't think that would have been as appealing. I did like the character. I liked the concept of having all 40 women and trying to understand each other, help each other out. But at least in this book, at least she has paragraphs, she has commas, question marks. In The Road by Cormac McCarthy, there was nothing. There was the prose, the story, everything was just one long journey that was never ending, and it frustrated me a little bit. But I think all in all, after I read the book, it's still with me and I still think about that book. So I mean, there's something that he did there, and there's something that she did here as well. So this story, like, it's, did it end properly, did it not end properly, I have no clue, and I'm not going to tell you even if I do. But it made me think a lot. Like, even now I know exactly what our young protagonist was thinking. And I think that's the beauty of writing such kind of books. Like, it stays with you, even though it doesn't give you all the answers. So I gave this a 3 stars, but I was thoroughly enjoying when I was reading this. I enjoyed this book a lot. So the next book that I read was The Poet Empress by Shen. The Poet Empress follows Wei Yin, a young woman who is trying to support her family in the midst of a failing dynasty. There's a famine spreading in the kingdom, and then there is a huge power shift that's going to happen within the royal court. So Wei Yin, who's a regular girl, she volunteers to be one of the concubines of this young prince who is set to be the next emperor of this failing dynasty. As she becomes the main concubine of this ruthless royal heir, a lot of court politicking starts happening. She needs a lot of courage, and then there's this forbidden kind of magic that's tied into poetry that would help her save herself and her family. I'm not explaining everything here because this has a very different magic system. This has a little bit of a different world than what I'm used to reading in the fantasy. But I think the world building was really well done. It did have dragons, but the main focus was court politics, the royal family, and everything around it. That was like the majority, 99% was that. Now, these royal family, the prince and the emperor, they all, in order to rule, have to have this magic system that's tied into, it's ingrained into their personality. So one prince has this ability to build, so that really helps in the infrastructure work, so that makes him like a capable of ruling, because that's a helpful magic to have. And then Wei is set to marry this guy. So now that she's in a position of power, a lot of different people in the court, they want to sway her into their direction, so that, you know, politics wise, they can always be inclined to get a favor or two. Now, Wei has a different motive. She has different motives as to why she actually offered to be a concubine altogether, to support her family, to support other kingdoms, like other villages, towns who are going through this dreadful famine. So she has her own agenda. So it was very politics heavy. Like, every single person, every single character in the palace, in the royal family, in the court, they have their own agendas, and they're all trying to step on each other, but also like doing it very quietly, because the heir, the prince, he is ruthless. Like, if you make a smallest mistake, he will kill you and he will torture you. So there's that dread there. But I think there is also, with as time passes, the Wei and the prince, they start forming a bond as well, and they try to understand each other. So it's that story is also there within this whole court politics happening, which I think was very interesting. Now, I watched this Netflix show called Bon Appetit, Your Majesty, and it gave me, I'm glad that I watched that show way before I read this book, it gave me a little bit of idea about the concubine concept within the royal families, and it gave me some idea about how the court politics happens. It's very different than that of Western court politics, I would say. Here concubines really have a lot of power, and the focus on having an heir could change everything overnight. I guess that's everywhere, but it was very fascinating to read. Now, I did like the rich world building. This is a standalone book, so I think it was the world building was done really well. The magic system was different and very appropriate with the world, the Azelia dynasty, the declining dynasty that we were reading about. So I did like the concept. Everything really gel together very well. I did give it 3 stars. I don't have anything negative to say about that. This is a debut novel. As a debut author, she really did a great job in trying to. It's very hard to write like such a complicated fantasy in the world building. I think everything tied together. I mean, I enjoyed it. This was like very Asian inspired. Dragons were there and everything, but everything worked out well. But there was this certain secret sauce that I felt like it didn't wow me. Like this was a standalone, so I think I rated it higher. But if it wouldn't have been a standalone, if it would have been a series, I may not have continued that series. I think I was happy and okay with reading the first book itself. So glad that it's a standalone. That's about it. I don't have anything negative to say, but just the feeling wise, it didn't give me a 4 or a 5 star feel, while I have read a lot of other fantasy books that just pulls me a little closer to the book. This one did it, but it didn't wow me. Like it didn't pull me as much as the other books did. That's my only negative thing to say about this book. Other than that, I actually enjoyed reading the book throughout. All right, on to the next book that I read in March, and my second 5 star of the month, it's Fellowship of the Ring by JRR Tolkien. This was an easy 5 star read for me. I read The Hobbit in January, and I want to continue reading at least one Lord of the Rings book every month. I mean, I missed out in February, but I read this one in March, and I hope to continue at least one book every month. Now, do you really need to know the story? Because I think everyone knows what the story of the Fellowship of the Ring is. In The Hobbit, we ventured into Bilbo Baggins' journey, his adventure into finding the ring, the one ring that rules them all. In the Fellowship of the Ring, Bilbo Baggins now leaves everything behind, and he leaves all his property, everything, to his nephew Frodo Baggins. Bilbo wants to again go leave everything and go on another adventure. As he's getting older, he's 101 years old. Sorry, 111 years old. He's fed up of the Shire life, the laid back life. So he wants to go in another adventure, and he doesn't want to tell anyone in the Shire. So he really loves Frodo Baggins. He's very much attached to him. So he leaves all his property, his house, his every single thing he leaves to Frodo Baggins. And with that, he also leaves his ring, the special ring that was so close to him all throughout his life since the last adventure in The Hobbit. He leaves that to Frodo Baggins. And now Frodo is older. He's now 50 years old, and then Frodo, somehow Gandalf one day comes over to his house, and he says that, there's been a huge conspiracy that's been cooking up. I think you need to leave. You need to leave the Shire right now and take the ring with you, because that's hell of an important ring, and your life might be in danger. So Frodo, in order to he puts his faith in Gandalf, and he also realizes that there is this foreboding event that is going to happen. So in order to that, he needs to save the ring. He needs to save the ring from these other creatures that are following him, probably potentially following him. So he plans to leave the Shire, and when he leaves the Shire, he takes along with him Samwell Gamgee, and then 2 other hobbits along with him, Pippin, and then the other one that I don't remember the name of. Now, the first half of the book is that it's all about friendship. It's all about people in the Shire, hobbits. It's all about the conspiracy behind the ring. Bilbo Baggins leaving the Shire to his own little journey, and Frodo Baggins realizing the importance of the ring, the importance of Bilbo Baggins leaving everything behind, and these creatures who might want to harm him and his friends. So just like Bilbo Baggins, Frodo also takes this amazing epic journey. How it's different from Bilbo Baggins' journey is that Bilbo knew where he was going, and he also already had his friends or companions along with him in the journey. But with Frodo Baggins, he only has his three friends along with him, but he has no idea where he needs to go. So he's trying to save his behind as much as possible, trying to put as many miles between him and the Shire, because the devil, the villain, the evil villain already knows where Frodo Baggins and the ring is. So people are trying to chase after him. Now, the first half was all about the ring, the Shire, the Frodo, and everything else. However, the second part of the book was all about the adventure. They're going from one place to another, again, trying to put as many miles between them and the Shire. And all along the journey, they're meeting these new people, and he's putting his faith in them because Gandalf trusts them, or because they've had some history with the ring and the evil that is lurking alongside. Now, I would say personally, this wasn't the book that I finished in 2 days or 3 days. It wasn't the book that I was reading like back to back on being unstoppable. No, I was actually taking some breaks in between. One, because I wanted to savor the story properly. I didn't want it to just read for the sake of reading, and the prose, the writing style, because it's been done such a long time back. I think you need some time off, because having too much information altogether, like there are too many characters, having too much information, it might not make me love this book as much as I would want to love. This book, it feels long. Like, it's how many pages it is? It's like 300. This book is 400 plus minus 10 pages long. And if it were any other book, I would have like read it in 2-3 days. But this one feels long. And I'm saying all these things, but it's not in a bad way. It's absolutely in a good way. I cannot believe that someone can pack this much amount of story, the adventure, but also not lacking in the relationships and the friendships, and just just amazing, like writing about these amazing bonds. He hasn't missed anything. There is so much packed in this book. There is so much packed in these 400 pages. Fantasy books these days could never. I think if this book was written in the current days, this would have been an easy 1,000+ pages long. It only goes to say how amazing JRR Tolkien's writing style is, that he included not just the friendship, the bonds, the adventure, the threat of this unknown evil, and we all felt it, right? These different creatures, different characters within this universe, along with having wonderful poems, having wonderful songs included in it. Like, how can someone include so much in this thin book and it isn't lacking anywhere? I don't think there is one instant where there was a line that was unnecessarily added. Every single line meant something. These had so many characters, so many different creatures, so many stories behind the relationships of these beings as well, all put into 400 pages. My mind is blown. Like, how can someone? My brain cannot. And I was just flabbergasted. I was so impressed trying to read this. And I don't know why I was reading it like I was a writer, and I was just appreciating the writing style all along with the story. I love this book, and I cannot wait to read the second book. I was going to say the third. Oh God, the epic scenes it has, the bridge of Khazad-dûm, you shall not pass. Oh, it was amazing. Just by the way, in the book, it's not you shall not pass, it was you will not pass. And the whole scene was so amazing. Like, the whole bridge scene was amazing. And the Lothlorians place when they go there, that whole thing was amazing. And you exactly know what I did. I finished the book. The very next day, I watched the movie. Because I watched the movie before I read the book, I was, of course, imagining everything that happened in the movie while I was reading the book. And I was constantly Googling, especially the elvish characters, the elves. Like, okay, who is this? Who's that? Because I was just getting a little confused with the names on who played whom in the movie. But all in all, just pick up this book, okay? My second last read in March was She's Not Sorry by Mary Kubica. This book follows Megan Michaels, who's an ICU nurse, and she's trying to balance out her really intense job along with single-handedly raising her teenage daughter, Sen. Now, one day, this mysterious patient called Caitlin gets admitted at the same hospital where Megan works, and Caitlin has recently taken a fall off the bridge and she's currently in coma. Now, on and off, Megan is assigned Caitlin to take care of her. So she starts to bond with Caitlin's parents, and she gets to know a little more about Caitlin as a person, like what happened to her. Did she commit this on her own, or was she pushed off the bridge? So these are the things that interested her a little bit. Now, at the same time, she also meets her really old acquaintance from school days, I think, or college days, called Natalie. Now, Megan always has a helping nature, so she takes pity on Natalie and she offers to help her in any which way she can. She also helps her to, let her crash at her house for a week or so. Now, in the middle of all of this, there is few things that keeps happening with Megan. First, she gets some threatening calls, and then she gets another call that her daughter has been kidnapped. So there are little things that keeps happening which upsets her, or just puts her in the edge, and she doesn't know who's doing these things, and she has no clue who's behind those things, and she wants to know as soon as possible. Now, there is a plot twist at the end, and I did ended up liking the twist that they did at the end. However, I gave this a 3 stars because other than that, there wasn't much in the book. Yes, there is this unsettling feeling of who's trying to just bug Megan since she's such a nice woman. She's helping people around. She's helping this patient as well. But yes, there is a foreboding sense of something is wrong and someone is not telling the truth. And we get to find out. And I think the plot twist was really done well. However, I gave it 3 stars because it didn't feel dangerous to me. I think I was just looking for a psychological thriller I was looking for a murder. Let's just put it that way. I was looking for a gruesome murder. Now to the book that I want to yap about endlessly. This is my 5-star read. This is my last read of March. This is my favorite read of March, even though this is also a 5 stars. And I don't know if you're seeing this already. I'm trying to look in the viewfinder. Yes, it's Alchemized by Sen Lin Yu. Look at how chunky this book is. Okay, do I need to tell you about the storyline? I feel like I don't want to tell anything about this book. Just go blind, okay? Just go blind, and it's such a beautiful, beautiful book. This made me cry at the end. I didn't cry, but I did shed a tear. There was like one drop of tear coming out of my eyes because I was just so glad reading this book. I was glad that I read this book. Alchemized follows Helena Marino, who is a healer, and she wakes up one day in this war-torn world, and parts of her memory is missing. Now, she knows that she survived something, but she cannot recall what she survived. She wakes up in this tank, and she's been tortured, and she has like manacles, hint, hint, on her wrist that suppresses her resonance, the power that she needs to heal other people's that has been suppressed by using these resonance resistant manacles on her wrist. Because she's missing a part of her memory, she's been assigned to this high reeve Cain Ferron to extract the memory that she has suppressed or is hidden in her brain. So she goes and lives with Cain Ferron's house, his family, as a prisoner. Now, this book is in 3 parts. The summary I gave, whatever happens here, is in part 1, and then in part 2 we go back in time to when the war was actually happening. So there's this eternal flame, the party to which Helena belongs to, and they believe in religion, the religion of Saul, the power that it gives, the resonance, the alchemy, and they believe that there needs to be some rules around using those power. Like, they take it as a religion. However, they have been attacked by this other side who they believe in science. They believe that the resonance has other powers as well. Example, necromancy, and necromancy is prohibited in the eternal flame side, and the other side, they are pro necromancy. And so there is a war between.
Now, in part 2, you get to know about this war, Helena and her party in the Eternal Flame, what they're doing to win the war. Whereas also in Kane Ferren's side, who are the players, the villains actually, who are playing a huge part in this war. Now, again, in the middle of it, there is a very unlikable, true enemies to lovers romance that comes into picture, and I think it is done so beautifully. Now, in the part 2, we want to know what exactly happened with Helena. How did she lose her memory, and what are the things that she lost her memories to? Like, she wants to remember it, and part 2 does that very well. And then there is part 3, which is the conclusion. I don't want to go there at all I want to say is that this is such a beautiful book. I loved every single part of this book. I loved reading every single page of this book. This is a 1,000 pager. It's not a thin book by all means, but every single page has a story to tell, and I think it's done beautifully. It needed 1,000 pages because I feel this is a true enemies to lovers, and I think it takes 1,000 pages for enemies to become lovers. I don't believe that there is any book who does enemies to lovers in 200, 300 pages. I don't buy it, and I don't like those books at all. I feel like if you need to turn to the other side, you need it to happen in a very slow burn kind of way, and this is exactly how it happens in the book as well. And I just love the chemistry. And yes, this is about a war torn world. It has a lot of fantasy, world building, things like that. But it is very much mainly about Helena Marino and Kane Ferron's relationship. And oh, it's so beautiful. Okay, this book does have a lot of trigger warnings as well. This has a dark themes for sure. And while I was reading part 1 of the book, I was getting a little frustrated in between, like trying to understand why this particular thing has happened, but I was so wrong. And in part 2, it explains everything. So I think Sen Lin Yu does the resistance really well. There are some reactions that she's mentioned in part 1, and um, when you go to part 2, you realize what was the meaning behind those reactions. And I think that's a really good restraint that the author has put into this book, because I don't want to get to know everything all at once. Like, give me some slow burn, let me flip through those pages, and let me just explain what those were. Maybe after 200, 300 pages, I'm fine with that. And I think that's the reason that this book pulled me so much. There are some books that needs to be read really fast, but this book needs to be savored slowly. And when I was reading this book, Lana Del Rey's Young and Beautiful was playing the entire time in my head. I was singing this song for the whole week when I was reading this book. It was amazing, but I was annoying everyone. Now, one of the other things that I liked about the book was that Helena's character, she's a healer. She is not a fighter in whichever way. However, there are some other books where I've read where the FMC initially is portrayed as this feeble, weak character, and every single time, like, it's the words, it's not the action, it's the word that keeps referring her as weak. Yes, I'm talking about you, Sorrendale from Fourth Wing. This one did not. We know that Helena is not a fighter, she's a healer. However, it's not so much in words that is said that she can't fight, or she doesn't have any training around that. It's more in the actions, and it's a preference. It's not because she's weak. And we will get to know that over the time, as the war happens, she does go from becoming this healer who's not had any training around fighting or self-defense altogether, to then one day becoming apt enough to fight her enemies. I was afraid to the direction where this was going. I think if what I thought would be the ending, it would have completely wrecked me. But I did appreciate Sen Lin Yu to have the ending that she had. I feel like this book really deserves the read. Even if you have read the fan fiction or not, I think you need to pick this book up, because this is one beautiful 1,000 pager. I've read big books before, and it feels really long, regardless of whatever it is. Like The Count of Monte Cristo, that's my absolute favorite book of all time. But that too felt at some places like really stretched out, and there were too many stories happening. This is just one story between two people, and it didn't feel stretched at all. It felt like every moment that was happening, it was happening at the right place at the right time. And the romance, I don't believe in romance just happening overnight. I feel like at least for me, it builds up over the years. And I guess Helena and Farron are the same kind of people. Like, they also have a very slow burn romance, and I just light up when I'm thinking about them. Please do give this book a read. Don't get intimidated by the size. Take your time, but definitely pick this one up. All right, those were my amazing reads of March. I thoroughly enjoyed reading each and every book in March. I think this was my favorite month out of the 3 months of the year, and I hope to have an amazing, amazing read throughout the year. Please do subscribe to my channel, like my video, share my video, and I shall see you soon.